Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus, episode 629, coming to you on the 30th of April, the year of our Lord, 2024. And today being a Tuesday means it's a Texas Tuesday. Before we get into the program as it is, let me remind you, the best way you can continue to help me grow the show and make a difference and get our voices heard, and quite frankly, allow me to continue to play cheerleader to the Liberty cause here in Collin County, McKinney, Texas, is to like, share, and subscribe to this program. Follow me on your social media of choice. I have a page and a group at Facebook. I'm a pro at Gab, and I still drop in at MeWe, and again, the show is still up over at YouTube. The subscriptions matter. The following matters. It helps me overcome the algorithm, which quite frankly is no friend of mine. So, here we go. On with the program. So I don't know if you've noticed, but there have been a lot of interesting things going on lately. There's now yet another court case before SCOTUS. I believe this time it's dealing with firearms. The last one was environmental standards. And SCOTUS has recently decided that federal overreach is a problem. This was no better seen than when they decided that Roe v. Wade was a bad decision made poorly, and the best way to fix it was to send it back to the states. Now, unfortunately, conservatives, us good Christian conservatives, the Republicans, if you will, failed to get that message, and they decided immediately they're going to start pressing for a federal law. Well, the whole reason they sent it back to the states is that was not the purview of the feds. It is a state issue, much like firearms restrictions, and quite frankly, a lot of the OSHA and EPA things really are best handled at the state level, because not every state is the same. Not every state has the same issues. And while it's nice to have a uniform way of approaching things, it hasn't been done properly. The Congress fails to do its job, and it turns it over to a bunch of administrators, and they make a muddled mess of it, and we all pay the price. So SCOTUS is apparently making a decision known, a ruling, if you will, whereupon the states can't interfere with certain restrictions on firearms. They're not allowed to do them. They exceed the permission. Now, if you want to stick to principles, if you want to stick to the Constitution, SCOTUS has got this wrong too. Each state has a right that's pre-existing that override the things that they've delegated to the constitutional government in D.C., which the government in D.C. is no longer constitutional, far overstepped its bounds, and quite frankly ignores any restrictions on it. That being said, if a state like New York or Illinois or New Jersey or California or Oregon or Washington or whatever, if they want to go in and say, we're going to restrict your access to firearms, they have that authority. Now, I don't agree with it. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's only going to lead to more tyranny, but they have that authority. Now, you could say that when they delegated that via the Second Amendment to the federal government, that they agreed that they would not interfere at the state level, but that's not true in my understanding. That's certainly not the understanding that, legitimate scholars have on this issue. And under the guise of federalism, that is states' rights, that is why the 10th Amendment exists, those states reserve that power and authority to do certain things, even if we don't like it. Even as a good, quote-unquote, Christian conservative, you can't stand the idea that in Kansas they're going to still murder babies in the womb. They have that right in Kansas to do that. It's pathetic. It's terrible. And I can't believe that there's enough people in Kansas that went along with this idea, but that's up to the state. Now, I know the Donald got himself in trouble because he said, well, that's a state issue. Let the states sort it out. It doesn't mean that suddenly he's for murdering babies in the womb. Now, he did trot out the well-worn, excuses, right? Life of the mother, rape, and incest. At least in two of those things, you're punishing an innocent bystander, the baby, that is rape and incest. But even if we just set that aside for the sake of argument, that's less than 2%. In the life of the mother, well, honestly, if it's the life of a mother, legitimate, she's going to die if she carries this baby to term, I don't think anybody would want to interfere in that. Not really. I would raise eyebrows. I would second doubt it or second guess it, I should say. And I would have my doubts because, well, that's the excuse for everything. Well, maybe it's not her life, it's just the health. Well, maybe it's not her health, it's the mental health. I mean, that is very much a slippery slope, which will exist and will be abused. But I would much rather deal with the idea that there are going to be some people that abuse the law in order to commit murder than create a bunch of tyranny, police state to prevent it. I had a conversation with a good libertarian friend of mine, and we don't necessarily see eye to eye on this issue. I think it would be fair to say that he personally doesn't agree with the idea that you would kill the baby in the womb. But he also points out how foolish it is that the Republican Party continues to fight over this and stake their entire future on it. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with his assertion that the red wave of 2022 was basically undone on that issue. Maybe. I mean, it's as good an argument as I had seen. But again, this is a principle. You don't set aside principle for an outcome. You might be willing to dial it back. You might be willing to take 51% or 60% or whatever percentage is a win and then come back later. I mean, that's what the leftists have been doing for 100 plus years. But to think that you got a free pass to go, full ban nationwide is a mistake. I think it's a really bad idea, if for no other reason than just straight up politically, because our culture has been, I'll use the word polluted, crafted, cultured. Yes, the culture has been cultured for 60 years that everything was A-okay if you start terminating babies before they're born. You're going to have to undo that and overcome that, and I don't think you do that overnight. And I certainly don't want to create yet another class of criminals that were thrown in a jail for doing something that was perfectly fine yesterday, even if we disagree with it. It's a very touchy situation, but here in Texas, not so much, right? Here in Texas and a couple of other states, it's pretty clear we don't support that. We don't go for that. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to suddenly become squishy because they don't want to upset a bunch of middle-class suburban white women. I get it. And this, honestly, is probably far more important to those middle-class suburban white women than it is to anybody else being able to go terminate a pregnancy because it's inconvenient for them. And they have money, and money talks. So we have to be very careful how we want to approach this. But again, this is our own fault in that we didn't make good arguments for 60 years. We finally got the major court case that we had been waiting for years and years and years, and we did a bad job with it. So I'm curious if you look at what SCOTUS is doing, and perhaps they're going to do similar things with these gun laws or the EPA or OSHA regulations, and they're going to kick it back to the states where it should have been in the first place. Are we going to then go fall on the sword to create federal law on top of it, or are we going to rightfully let it be handled by the individual states that it impacts? I'm going to guess that because Republicans seem to like losing for meaningless things, and as Rush Limbaugh used to say, snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory, I imagine this isn't going to go well for us. But here in Texas, we have opportunities. Here in Texas, we could be leading the way. Now, that requires that we have good, solid leaders. That requires that we have people that are willing to do more than wet their finger and stick it into the air to see which way the wind is blowing. We're going to have people with courage and a backbone to go out and stake the ground and say, this is what is right, and we're doing the right thing here. So why did I lay all this out? Why did I even go down that rabbit trail of abortion? Well, because even though you might think something is a good idea, or even though you might actually support something being done at the national level, most things are better left to the states. Good conservatives know this. Good conservatives are willing to check their Christian principles on the greater understanding of, we set up this Constitution to protect everybody. And if we're not going to follow the rules that we created, then we got to reconsider everything. Now, again, I don't like it. It's not a good idea. I'm never, ever going to be okay with what happens under that circumstance. But I also understand that there are other ways for it to be dealt with. You have to undo a culture that has been indoctrinated for 60 plus years. You don't do that overnight. And you don't take that major win and you throw it to the major win and throw it into the wind. You have to build upon it. So now this is where I'm going. This is the latest thing I've seen. Apparently, President Biden has determined that he alone has the ability to go ahead and newly assert power and authority over the Texas or the other state Air National Guards and fold them into the Space Force. Now, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have that authority. I'm pretty sure that's a congressional thing. And I'm also pretty sure that they don't have any control or dictates over a state National Guard or state Air National Guard unless such time that there is a war declared. Yet they routinely do it, and most of the states just roll over and say, oh, please, give us some money, it'll be okay. Yeah, I'm not down with that. That's a major problem there. We're going to push the Protect the Guard Act. We're going to show up down in San Antonio, and we're going to bring it up over and over and over again. It needs to be a legislative priority. If we cannot, as a state, control what our state guard, the National Guard, Air National Guard, is doing, and put them under the control of their true commander-in-chief, which is the governor, even though the governor doesn't always do the job or do it well, he's still the commander-in-chief of the Air National Guard and the state National Guard in Texas and the other states that have this as well. And we need to do a better job of asserting our control and sovereignty over them and not just willy-nilly cave in and do whatever they want us to do in D.C. And I know that there's going to be a move on the national level that this is what's best. We have to get more troops or whatever for Space Force. No, don't believe it. Don't buy it. Don't go along with it. This is going to have to do more with the fact that they can't recruit people because they've turned the military into a laughingstock. They spend more time putting guys in high heels, paying for trans surgery, than actually raising up, defining good soldiers, good Marines that are out there to go kill people and break things. And yes, I know the chair force is involved. I mean, they are the remote bombers, and if it absolutely needs to be destroyed overnight, send your A-10s or your Puff the Magic Dragons. I get it. And the Navy, my former service, we're a really good delivery service for the Marines, and we can do some other really neat things too. But the fact of the matter is, the purpose of the military has been destroyed under President Biden and his predecessor, Baraki, or the Big O, I guess I'll stick with that, the Big O. And we understand where we're going. We know what the game is here, and we're not going to give up control of the last line of defense that we have at the state level, which is the state National Guard and the state Air National Guard. We have to put down a line. We got to mark the line in the sand. We have to protect our guard. The opportunity exists that we could do this. It's just whether or not our state legislature is willing to assert their authority and whether or not our governor is willing to metaphorically stand up and do the right thing here. I won't be holding my breath. Sad to say it. But we have to choose. This is a time for choosing, and choose you must. You can't just let this go by. You can't let these things be unchallenged. Now, fortunately, we have an attorney general that likes suing the federal government, that likes pushing back, that likes taking on some of these multinational corporations that do bad things within the state and push back on them. But I would really like it so much better if the governor would be in that fight as well. And while we're at it, the lieutenant governor would be in that fight as well. And when and if we get another Speaker of the House that's better than what we've had for the last 10 plus years, perhaps they could be involved and toe the line here as well. This would be really good if we could be unified in our opposition to the oppression from D.C., the abuse of power from D.C. If we could just hold the line and say no more. We're going to make a choice to stand for Texas. Now look, there's many solutions that are out there. I mean, the folks that think you can fix it with a constitutional amendment or an Article 5 convention, yeah, if only that was true. They don't follow the Constitution that we have now. They don't obey the restrictions that they have now. Do you really think passing another constitutional amendment is going to change anything? I think we already know the answer to it. Now, yes, it is constitutionally permissible. It is constitutionally appropriate. But if they're not going to follow the rules that are already in place, what makes you think that doing one more thing under the old rules is going to get us the answer that we're looking for? We are post-constitutional America. We are a failing empire. We are going to be breaking apart at some point in the future, whether we like it or not. They've spent us into oblivion. They've abused their power. They are flailing about and destroying what's left of a once great nation. That leaves Texas, the Republic of Texas, which never really went away, but just agreed to join the Union. Now, let me ask you, do you think that it is best for us to continue to go along as things have always been? Do you think we're going to have a good outcome? Now, we can play in the Pangloss world where this is the best of all possible outcomes and everything's going to be just all fine. And I can continue to be Cassandra, which is telling you the truth and you all ignore me because you don't believe me. But I'm here to tell you that if you just take a little bit of time and you look back on history, this doesn't end well for a failing empire. The outcomes are a couple of different ways of happening, but it is entirely possible for a peaceful transition to a successor state. It's been done multiple times through history. We can survive. We will survive. The way we do that is by putting Texas first. Oh, you knew that was coming, didn't you? If we can't have our leaders, our elected leaders in the state of Texas, put Texas first, then we need to get new ones, or we need to school them. If we can't get our congressmen and senators to go to D.C. and remind them that Texas is only going to play nicely for so long. And if you keep pressing and you keep ignoring the Constitution and you keep doing all these other things, we're going to feel like we need to go our own way. Now, a couple of weeks we spent talking about the worst case scenario possible outcome. I'm not convinced that's going to happen. I mean, if you just look at what we've been partaking on overseas, I don't think we have the wherewithal to even deal with it in-house. I think they've done such an effective job of destroying what was once a great thing that there's really no means to force anybody to stay. And while we're at it, I'm quite content to let California go off and do its own thing. In fact, if California wanted to separate amongst itself and just take the coastal areas where the crazy leftists are and create their own little nation, I'd pretty much be A-okay with that. I'm also very certain that they would run it in the ground within the next 10 years. And quite frankly, it would be what it already is. But it wouldn't be only understood. It would be in name as well. If you think the problems in San Francisco or Los Angeles are going to just stay there and never go anywhere else, you're mistaken. But perhaps if California went its own way and they chose to deal with it themselves, and we were to actually respect the new borders and actually tell people, yeah, we don't need that trash here, we could do better. When they say that you're supposed to look out for the least of these, right? When they say you're supposed to care for the poor and the widows, that's true, but you don't import all of them for the rest of the world and come here. That's not a good option. There's some responsibilities by the neighbors that you already have. But everybody ignores that part as well. The real question is, who's your neighbor? Well, again, in my mind, Texas first. My neighbors are all in Texas. My neighborhood is Texas. Does that mean that I'm going to ignore what happens in the next states over in Mexico, old Mexico? Or perhaps we need to find a way to work with New Mexico? Or perhaps we bring Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana along for the ride? I don't know. Those are our neighbors outside of our neighborhood. Those are the people we need to be concerned with after we take care of our own. If you don't take care of your own, you're no better than the regular pagans out there. You're no better than people that, quite frankly, kill their babies. We have to take care of our own. We have to put our own first. We have to consider that Texas first actually means something. We have to put the pieces into place to make a difference right here, right now. Now, maybe nothing happens. Maybe it goes 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. Who knows? Who cares? Because I'll be dead in 50 years. Well, maybe not, but more than likely I'll be dead in 50 years. But I want to set up a scenario where the people that follow me can be successful. The people that stay in Texas and build Texas as a republic can be successful and will do better than what we are now. And honestly, with the way things are looking, it's not going to be that hard. They've pretty much run us into oblivion. And it's just the fact that we're still gaining people that are coming from other parts of the world that are far worse than what we are right now. And quite frankly, a number of those people coming over here are not here for good purposes. They're not here to hide out from the oppressive governments they came from. No, they're coming here to help our government become more oppressive. If you doubt me, do your own research. Now I want to put a coda on this, if you will. I want to stop right here. There's really nothing more I have to say about this issue right now. But it starts right now. And it starts right here, out our back door. You have to consider, do you think that you can put somebody that's ill-prepared, underqualified in a position without somebody there to transition and build up that person? Well, transition's probably train up and prepare that person to take that role. Do you think that is a good idea? I don't. Every time we have an election, we roll the dice on whether the new candidate's going to be better than the old candidate. We're faced with the idea, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, every election cycle. Now, perhaps this time around, we're going to kick Tony Gonzalez to the curb and put Brandon Herrera in there. Do I think Brandon Herrera is perfect? No. I don't know the guy. I never met him. I like his YouTube videos. I think he's an interesting guy. But am I fairly certain he's going to be better than Tony Gonzalez? Well, yeah, absolutely. And as if my endorsement meant anything, sure, I'll give it. Brandon Herrera, if you live in Texas 23, please send him to Congress. It was clear to me that the best choice was the one we already had in Texas 3, right? Congressman Self's been doing a great job. Is he perfect? No, but nobody is. So those are simple things. Herrera was able to force Gonzalez into a runoff, and we've got several other runoffs. I talked about those yesterday. But let me ask you, how confident are you of putting somebody into a role that they have zero experience for, zero preparation for, and quite frankly, are being thrown in the midst of a battle? How comfortable and confident are you that that's the right choice? Now, for me, I understand why you would do that for a House seat. I understand why you do it for a Texas House seat, a Texas Senate seat. I get all that. But when you're running an organization, when you're trying to redeem the school districts at the state level, now it gets interesting. You have to look bigger picture. Now, for me, I've got mixed feelings about the runoff for, Texas school board district or a state school board district for 12, by all means, I believe that the challenger is more conservative, going to find things more on our side. I believe that. Are we going to get the outcome we're looking for? Again, I'm ready to roll the dice. I hope we don't run into meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But the person that's there hasn't really impressed me, to be honest. Doesn't mean I hate her. Just explore the option. I mean, every challenger across the board in the Texas House that is still in the fight, absolutely. Let's roll the dice. Let's get new people in there. The House has been so stagnant and so slow because of, quite frankly, poor leadership from the Speaker of the House. But quite frankly, he's empowered by a lot of, let's call them sellout Republican leaders. Maybe sellout's a little harsh. Go along, get along crowd. Some would call them establishment. And I'm uncomfortable with that. I think they're just doing what they think is best for their own selves, not for Texas. They're failing to put Texas first. That's my problem. I'm not interested in putting somebody in a position of authority or power that can't put Texas first. In case I haven't been clear up to this point, I am very concerned for the Texas state and the Texas State Party if we don't get good leadership there. I've thrown my support behind Abraham George. I believe he's the best guy for the job. Is he everybody's favorite? No. Is he perfect? No. But I'm quite confident he's the best option we have. Does that mean that if somebody else wins, they're going to have a hissy fit and quit and be all upset? No. I'm going to fight the good fight, and whatever the vote is, I'm going to accept it and move on. Likewise, even more concerned about my own Calhoun County Republican Party. If Shelby Williams doesn't win, I'm very concerned what's going to happen there. That doesn't mean I hate or don't dislike, or I dislike the person that's running against him. It just means that it's an obvious problem that if we don't address it and if we don't overcome whatever misgivings some of these folks have, real or imagined, they're going to continue to keep doing the bad stuff that they've been doing, in my opinion. I think Shelby's the right guy to figure a way forward. But if he loses, God forbid if he loses, I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to just throw in the towel. It'll be mighty tempting because I don't have a lot of faith of the people that are pushing his opponent. The people that are pushing his opponent think they're going to be able to push everything and anything once they get their handpicked candidate in there. But is it going to be the end of the world? No. Am I going to quit and roll up? No. Because it begins right now, right here. You're going to have to keep moving. You're going to keep having to push for the idea that Texas has to come first. And with that, this has been According to Callus. Oh, and in case you're curious, anybody that would think that Brent Hagenbaugh is going to be a better representative for SD30 than virtually anybody else hasn't been paying attention. For Pete's sake, the guy doesn't even live in the district, and he nearly ran the county party into the ground all by himself. Never mentioning the fact that, he gave money to Democrats. Just saying. Hey, but that didn't stop the lieutenant governor from jumping in. Politics makes strange bedfellows. If you're an SD30, you have a real simple choice. Anybody but Brett. Say no to Hagenbaugh. And with that, now it has been enough. This has been According to Callus, and I will see you on the other side.